Thank the gentleman. We now recognize the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Gosar, for 5 minutes.
Gentlemen, coming from an area in Arizona that has got huge unemployment needs from Native Americans all the way through the private sector, let me ask you the question, of all the regulatory burdens and agencies, which one is least based on sound science?
Well, I'll start. I'm not sure that I want to handicap that, Congressman, but I will say that because the EPA is promulgating probably more regulations than any other agency impacting manufacturers, we find ourselves contesting a lot of the measurements that are used as they draft their regulations. So that's the one agency that I think we find ourselves trying to monitor the most closely.
For agriculture, I would say that in addition to the EPA, that it's really the Department of Interior and how they enforce things like and define the Endangered Species Act. We find, as I testified, that in many cases they come up with their own scientific results, which when they're challenged by peer review or when they're challenged in court, they're found to be based on poor science, and they need to redo the science. So I think what happens is they develop a certain intellectual bias towards a certain position. For example, if they work in there, perhaps they're more biased toward wildlife than they are toward the economy or the human environment. And that's where we run into problems, is we don't have that blend of interests.
I would say the EPA, and we have been engaged with the EPA on issues since 1996, and we've gone from global warming, then the winters came and the hurricanes came back. Now it's climate change, but it's the same dog and pony show. And Senator Inhofe is going to put out a book called The Hoax, and I'm anxiously awaiting for its release.
EPA, without question. Two examples. Wind farms. Wind farms are an absolute example of 21st century silliness. And ethanol. Ethanol, in coming from Wisconsin, we have lots of farms. Why we produce corn to convert into ethanol, which reduces gas mileage on automobiles, I will never understand.
I also would agree the EPA. I can't say I'm directly affected. The industry we work for, the customers we have are directly affected, and therefore it does hold them back from expanding or moving forward with projects that they'd like to add to their business base simply because of unreasonable and unachievable regulations.
Second question, how much time do you spend in trying to adhere to the regulatory burden in your businesses?
Well, we have 11,000 members, Congressman, and I can't give you an average, but it could be anywhere from hours to days, and I'd defer to some of the individuals who are running companies directly.
I would say that at least 10% or more of the time is spent just trying to comply with the regulatory burdens, because that's about the cost of complying with them.
It's a big trouble. 98% of our members are very small businesses with limited accounting and legal support, and many times they get fined and get in trouble for being late or inaccurate with their reporting.
I'll give you a real-life example, EEOC complaints. We had two of them. One was from a Hispanic woman who claimed that we terminated her because she was Hispanic, and another one was from a white male who claimed we terminated him because he wasn't American. Now, each of those two cases, both of which were not valid, and we ended up winning, took at least 1 week of my time, my personal time, to just complete a response to those and getting all the information and responding to the EEOC and their documentation request. And for the price of a 44-cent stamp, you can file one of those, and we have to respond to it.
I would say in my business, we're probably looking at least 20%. But most importantly, these regulations are so in-depth and so large that we have got to pay outsiders, whether it's attorneys or business organizations or what, to really critique these regulations and advise us as to what we can and what we cannot do. And that takes money away from my company being able to expand or hire additional people. I'm spending it on the attorneys or business groups helping us try to understand the regulations.
I thank the gentleman.